Hey, I'm Trieulootech, a Challenger ADC main, and I want to welcome you guys to How to ADC Laning Phase Edition. Okay, so welcome back guys, and I introduce you guys to my personal favorite subject, off-meta ADCs. Now let's first of all answer the question, what is off-meta? Now for this question there is no real concise answer, as this is a very vague topic in general, and if you ask anybody they usually give different answers. However, when I personally like to think of the word meta, not you Mark Zuckerberg, I just like to think of the most popular way to play League. So for this specific instance, since we are talking about ADCs, we're going to be looking at a very meta or a popular ADC at the moment, Jinx. So the reason why she is meta or very popular is due to many reasons, right? She has a reset mechanic. She is very strong early game to the point where she gets shoved in many matchups. She is strong late game. And obviously, that does influence her high pick rate and ban rate in pro play, and high play rate and ban rate in solo queue as well. So now that we looked at a meta champion, what is off meta? Off meta obviously being off a meta champion. So for off meta champions, we are going to be looking at a complete opposite or a 360, and we are going to be looking at champions with low play rate slash pick rate alongside with obviously low ban rate because they don't really be played, and champions that I personally believe just aren't fit into being an ADC role. So what this means is obviously by release, Riot releases champions by certain roles. Let's just say Senna was specifically released for support. Even though I don't consider her an off-meta ADC, she obviously has been tuned more towards the meta for ADC champions because people have realized how good Senna ADC is through fasting Senna. I mean, she still builds support items. However, I just consider her an ADC. So for off-meta ADCs, we are going to be looking at champions like weird champions like Rengar Ivern, some champions like Cassiopeia, Syndra, things that aren't really commonly played. However, we are going to make an exception with Senna. For the purposes of this video, we do want to know a solidified way or structure of how to actually beat these off-meta champions, as it's very uncommon that you run into them, so you don't really know how these matchups specifically work. So what I am exactly doing in this video is going to show you how to exactly play against these champions. And obviously, if you want to play as these champions, I do have a lot of videos of playing different off-meta picks. So this guide is mainly going to be catered towards playing against off-meta ADCs. And obviously, as this whole series goes, if you guys are new here, we are going to be teaching you basically, you know how that Chinese proverb goes,
give a man a fish, and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime.
That's basically my whole series and how it's basically structured to work. So we are not going to be looking at specific examples. Let's just say we are looking into a Swain lane versus a Draven lane, right? That's too niche of an example, and you guys are probably not going to face that lane very often. But what we are going to do is a more structured way, just general tips that you could do playing against these off-meta picks, as there is real no hidden way to deal with, like, let's just say Yasuo ADC. It's really just up to like basic fundamentals on how you really counter these types of off-meta champions. So the reason why a lot of champions are off-meta for so long is really it's just not that good, right? Let's just say for Veigar ADC, there's obviously apparently weaknesses. You could abuse him in the early game. He doesn't have that strong of trading early, so you could punish him in very specific scenarios, and that is what we are going to be focusing on. So first of all, when playing against off-meta picks, we really want to be focusing on our summoner spells and rune setups. So this is really done by identifying, first of all, what on their team is going in the ADC role. So if we see specific champions like Veigar, Cassiopeia, Syndra, Karthus, and I don't know, more picks like Kindred, however that is very more uncommon, we definitely know that they could be flexed in the bot lane. What I mean by that is being flexed means that they could be picked in many different roles. So let's just say Karthus could be picked in jungle, he could be picked in mid, he could be picked in ADC, Syndra could be picked in mid ADC, Veigar could be picked in mid and ADC, and Kindred obviously I made a guide on it. He could be picked in the jungle, mid, and ADC categories. So versus many of these off-meta picks, a certain summoner spell setup is really good against certain picks. So versus, for instance, Veigar, a very popular way to counter him is just to take cleanse. So the reason why you would be taking cleanse against Veigar is so you can play more aggressively in the early game by stepping past his cage and not having to burn flash. Because if you burn flash, if the jungler ganks and Veigar has cage, you're almost always dead. Another specific instance is an older bot lane called Taliyah Pantheon. Taliyah Pantheon obviously being very well known in around Season 8, Season 9. It really ran rampant and not many people knew how to counter it. So a very specific instance against Taliyah Pantheon is running bone plating secondary. So bone plating obviously not being very well known in the ADC category because people don't really take it that much, right? Bone plating plus cleanse against Taliyah Pantheon is a huge deal breaker because how Pantheon works is with when he W's, right? He just autos 3 times. When you have bone plating, all the W damage is depleted, and the only damage that you're really face tanking is Taliyah. So you're going to be living that burst compared to, obviously, if you took, let's just say, heal with scaling runes. Scaling runes obviously is better in the long run if you have a free lane. But versus many off-meta ADCs, when you're playing against a more aggressive lane, taking a more early game rune setup against, like, let's just say Taliyah Pantheon, Kindred, Leona, it's just a lot better so they don't get snowballed. Because if Taliyah Pantheon or Kindred doesn't get snowballed, they really have no avenue to win the game as they just fall off more comparatively to, let's just say, a Jinx with bone plating. So in general, the best way to think about this is what does the enemy champion want to do in the bot lane? So for all the instances that I listed out is early game champions, obviously. However, for like more later game champions, you definitely do want to punish them earlier and not let them breathe too much, right? A great way to do that is to actually ask your jungler for no leash. When you don't leash early, you can actually poke them out of lane early. And for specific instances like playing against Veigar, they can actually just completely miss the first 3 melee minions as they can't really trade back against the ADC early on. Which really connects us to our next tip, and that's to play exactly how they don't want to play comparatively to how you want to play. So playing against off-meta ADCs is completely different to playing against normal ADCs, because against normal ADCs you want to keep a triangle pattern, obviously, and just trade accordingly to your auto attacks, right? However, for off-meta ADCs, they generally typically revolve around their spells. So this may seem a bit weird, so we are going to be looking at a more specific example so you could really envision it. So we are going to be looking at an ADC where we employed the exact same strategy, whether you know it or not, right? Draven. So Draven, as you guys know, is a super aggressive ADC who really thrives off kills because obviously his passive gives more gold than normal whenever you get a kill. So what do you guys think is the best strategy to employ versus a champion like Draven? We just want to be making sure that we don't die as many times as possible to him. So the best way to do that is just to play safer and to play a more structured early game where you just really farm early, and then after the early game ends, you have a lot more rain on the Draven as he has less scaling than you do typically. So playing safe obviously applies to all these different off-meta early cheese lanes like Rengar Ivern, Kindred ADC, and Taliyah Pantheon as I previously listed. Almost always against these off-meta bot laners, they won't be able to one-shot you, so don't worry about that unless they are super fed, which shouldn't have happened in the first place. So as another proverb goes, patience is a virtue. And sometimes, obviously, the correct play is just to not do anything. No, hold on. What I mean by this is not to just AFK in the backlines like how that AFK Nami, how that AFK Lulu goes. As you know how I personally hate that, how you guys personally hate that as well, right? Because the reason being, obviously, you have 0 impact in the game and you don't really play laning phase at all. That's just boring. That's plain out boring. So what we want to do rather than that is actually employing the same triangle technique. However, just making sure you don't get engaged on by their support. You just want to poke them away as much as possible while still not getting engaged on. You just want to keep a safe distance all the time. So now that brings us to another real question. What is really safe? Should I just be sitting under the tower the whole game until the jungler comes, employing the triangle technique? Well, this is a weird question, but kind of. By employing a wave manipulation technique called freezing, we can actually keep it as close to our tower as possible so they don't have that much of a longer lane to run us down in aggressive lanes. And we could really exploit the enemy's weaknesses even when they are playing scaling AP bot laners as well. Now, I know I didn't go on about this subject yet in the series. What freezing basically is just keeping your minions on your side of the lane, so you can just play as aggressively as possible. This means that enemy minions usually have more minions than you, and you just hold it near your tower so you could just do whatever you want with it. The best way to think of it is just like this, right? If you're playing Yassuo ADC, and you know how your E works, right? You just dash through many minions. How can you dash through minions if the wave is near your tower? Or near the enemy tower in this specific scenario. So you won't be able to dash through the minions, and since you're melee ranged, right, you can't actually Q the minions, otherwise you'll get poked down, and if you wind wall to Q the minions, your wind wall will be down, so you could get engaged on. Or if we look at another scenario, let's just say Pantheon Taliyah. What happens if Pantheon stuns when the enemy champion is under their tower? The enemy champion just cleanse flashes out of it, and then the Pantheon's dead. He has no way to really get out of it, because the enemy support will obviously engage on you, and then what happens there? Nothing. And now I know I listed 2 more aggressive examples. Let's look at an example like Veigar, right? With Veigar, he obviously has his cage. If you're not frozen, what happens, right? If you have no flash, you have no cleanse, you're just immediately dead if you're pushed up in the enemy's wave, just pushing their tower and the jungler tries to gank you. So freezing is a very popular strategy that really works extremely well versus off-meta champions, and it works well versus meta champions as well. So lastly, for certain off-meta bot laners, let's just say Swain, Karthus, Syndra, Cassiopeia, we want to be playing the game like it really is a certain mini game. So this is completely different than playing against normal ADCs, because when we're playing against normal ADCs, we're just employing the triangle strategy, which is kind of like a mini game, but not at the same time. However, for these specific instances, we do have to dodge their spells. So what you want to be doing is you want to be faking your auto attack until they use their spells, and then once you fake it, you just move out of the way. This works very well versus certain ADCs as well, but it is mainly a source to play against off-meta ADCs, because when you're playing against mages, right, spells are all their damage rather than being auto attacks. So once you dodge their spells that you actually were stutter stepping, right, you say you miss a minion for dodging a spell. It's worth it in the long run because you can play more aggressively upon them. And if you play more aggressively upon them, obviously they are forced to take a recall and in general miss more minions than you previously have missed. Or obviously if you get hit, just use your HP pot, regen back up, and just keep playing that same mini game over and over again. That's a really popular strategy to play against specific mages, and it works really well when you're playing in the ADC role as well, obviously against off-meta champions. So in general, this video is a lot shorter and obviously less concise than other videos that I have previously made. This really is because I thought it would be way too long if I list specific scenarios for every single off-meta ADC, and obviously it really wouldn't work too well because for off-meta ADCs, there's a lot of different niches and different matchups depending on the ADC you play. That's why for off-meta ADCs, I made more of a, let's just say, vague guide. However, I do really hope this helps you guys out on many thought processes and just in general how to play against off-meta ADCs, and really opens your brain on how to play against them. Obviously, if you guys do want to play off-meta ADCs, I didn't really encompass that at all in this video. However, if you guys look down below in my channel, I play many off-meta ADCs. And you can really see how to play it and how my thought process goes throughout a game if you check out those videos. Thank you guys very much for watching this video of how to ADC, and see you guys next time.